Welcome to the deck tech of the Reanimator list that's just being made for post-rotation in Standard. As you guys can see, this list is very similar to the one that Jerry Thompson and Brad Nelson brewed up a couple days ago in testing for the rotation. I can't say definitively that I came up with the list first, but I can say that I developed the list prior to seeing them with it, at least 2 days ahead of time. More than likely, they have already been developing the list several days before they shot their playtesting video. But really, the deck wasn't too hard to come up with. The shell, which is basically this, is the same. Maybe not the Thragtusk, but probably. This will always probably be the same, and given that Tracker's Instincts will become Grisly Salvage, Birds of Paradise will most likely become Arbor Elf, unless they reprint birds, then at least I would replace Avacyn's Pilgrim with Arbor Elf because of the dual lands they're printing. And Faithless Looting at the moment isn't very playable because you don't have sufficient untapped dual lands that produce red and green anyways. Blood Crypt isn't reliable given Arbor Elf, so they've been playing Lotlith Troll, which is probably what we were going to switch out anyway. We just haven't updated our list. But anyways, this is the same. So really, the question was, what fat creatures can you put in that win you the game? Ever since Elesh Norn and Inferno Titan rotate out, we had trouble trying to find a large creature. Gristlebrand just wasn't cutting it, and the Angels weren't cutting it, even though you can see these here in the sideboard. In fact, I can go ahead and show these to you. These were really these two, not this angel. These were really the other fatties we were trying to consider reanimating. We want something that can either end the game fast or impact the board immediately, but ending the game fast that requires it to untap isn't reliable. There's too much removal, and the removal's only getting better. So we really wanted something that did both, but more so impacted the game, at least enough to put you ahead. And that's exactly what Elesh Norn did. Elesh Norn either killed all their creatures, even if they immediately removed it, or it killed all the creatures and it pumped your creatures in order to kill them quick enough before they could find an answer to it. But usually the sweeping effect was just enough to win the game itself. Eventually, after looking through all the best creatures we could find, I came across Craterhoof Behemoth. He's obviously large and in charge, but him by himself obviously isn't sufficient, unlike Elesh Norn, which is what makes Elesh Norn obviously better than this creature, but this would probably be the next best thing. The good thing about Craterhoof here is that it interacts very well with your early Mana Accelerators and Lingering Souls. Typically, Lingering Souls was in the deck just to kind of stall long enough to get to the Elesh Norn and to maybe act as beaters with the +2 that Elesh Norn gave him. But now you want to kind of play your fat creatures, dig a little with Lingering Souls in play, and then when you hit the Craterhoof, they get so much bonus that the swing back is usually lethal. It's an alpha strike. So he was the perfect candidate as the creature. Currently, this list is almost identical to the way it will be post-rotation. I'm actually convinced it might be just a bit better, given the mana will be a little better, but we're going to lose Inferno Titan. And so right now I'm trying to figure out what my extra fatty slot is. I'll probably end up mainboarding the 4th Thragtusk. A lot of the Troll's a beating slot, so it might not be necessary that we need it. But I want to try to figure it out. I really like the card Gerard's Order, so I might want to try to run 2 of them. I would like to run 3, although it's probably not going to happen because I'm probably going to need to up this slot to 4 for Tracker's Instincts, become Grisly Salvage, because it's actually better than Mulch. Anyway, if I do run Gerard's Order, it could probably let me shave Craterhoof down to 3 or even 2 because you can tutor him up and put him in your graveyard. Although you want consistency, you want to be able to mulch and Grisly Salvage into the Craterhoof, which is why you're in 4. But the only other creatures I could consider running are one of these, or both, or the new Oblivion Ring-esque Angel. It has like a triple Oblivion Ring effect on creatures. But instead of leaving the battlefield trigger, returning it to the battlefield, it returns it to their hand, which is pretty powerful. It can also target cards in the graveyard. So I encourage you guys to look up all these cards I'm mentioning if you're not familiar with them. But back to this current list. This is to test the general shell of the deck, as I mentioned in the group. For the most part, this version's pretty strong. You have plenty of turn 1 plays. Inferno Titan can kind of act as your answer to things. But typically, if you notice, there isn't answers in this deck. There isn't removal or any kind of responsive spells. These are all proactive spells. But they're variant. They can act in other senses. Like Lingering Souls can be used defensively. Or Inferno Titan can be used defensively and as a removal slot. You can't really use Great Hoof defensively, but that's typically the deck. It's just so procreative that you can't really take the time to use removal spells, and they're just not necessary. You're always doing something to where they need to respond. Since you're always in the driver's seat, they're going to have to either have the answer or die, and most of the time you don't even give them the option of having the answer. So that's really how the deck works. Traditionally, this kind of deck is called Frights, which was derived from a French player who pretty much designed the whole deck, and he used burial rights, so they call it Frights, which is French burial rights. I'm calling the list Reanimator because I think it acts a little bit more like that, and it's technically a new deck. And that's based off the Legacy deck Reanimator, which does almost the same thing as this does. And it'll be even more similar once I get Gerard's Order, because I'll have my Entomb effect. As far as the sideboard goes, I'm probably not going to keep Avacyn in. I don't know, I can't really think of a lot of scenarios where I want to bring her in. Maybe against decks that don't have Oblivion Ring, I don't know. But I think Giselle and Gristlebrand are good. Honestly, I'd like just a bunch of copies of Gristlebrand in the sideboard, but the only reason I have this one is because I pulled it in a sealed. I actually like these two cards. Obviously, Thragtusk comes in probably almost every match. When you think about it, the card is good against every deck and every archetype. It's good against aggro, as in it blocks multiple times and gains you life. It's good against control because it's value and hard to remove. Although I don't think this kind of, like, he's good against control if you're playing aggro or mid-range, but this isn't the kind of deck, so he actually might come out against control, and I might put in, like, Avacyn or something. Or definitely Gristlebrand, but maybe Avacyn too. And really, the only other thing the sideboard does is give us removal and responses. If there's absolutely something we have to respond to, like, really the only reason I have Curse is to respond to Infect, but it absolutely shuts it down. I have some purges to take care of zombies, although I have a pretty good matchup against zombies with the mainboard Thragtusks. Purge rotates, but it can be replaced by either Angel of Glory's Rise or Knight of Glory. Probably Knight of Glory, 2 mana. Oblivion Ring against probably slow control decks with Planeswalkers, or more likely also use it as my artifact hate stuff because I don't have any of that. It's probably a mistake not to be playing Ancient Grudge, but I currently don't have it online, so I might replace it with Ancient Grudge. I don't know. Oblivion Ring's a little slow, but it's versatile. Anyways, I'm going to be doing my deck text like this from now on. That way you guys don't have to click a link and read it. If you guys are still interested in the links so you can have a hard copy, just let me know. I might still do it anyways. I'm not sure. Usually the reasons I don't is just because I'm lazy. You actually have to take the time and type all the cards out. This is pretty simple to see. I guess I'll give one last sketch over the interactions and then maybe the lands. Pretty much what you do is early in the game you're dropping lands that will either let you play accelerators or Faithless Looting. Faithless Looting can reshape your hand and fuel your graveyard, which is just an extension of your hand given that I think at least 4 spells have flashback. Yeah, Faithless Looting, Tracker's Instinct, Lingering Souls, and Burial Rights. This card won't exist in the board anymore, but it currently does, so we're going to go ahead and count it. Normally you gotta play the accelerator prior to the Faithless Looting. The few times that will be opposite is if you need to fix your mana. And afterwards, you usually have enough mana to play a Faithless Looting and a Tracker's Instinct or Mulch on turn 2 if you play the accelerator turn 1 or a Lingering Souls on turn 2. But usually, unless you absolutely need to stay alive by blocking or you have the nut hand to set up for a turn 4 win, you're going to cast one of these two or both turn 2 to start fueling your graveyard to look for the win or the Inferno Titan. Typically on turn 3, which is the earliest you can reanimate something, you don't want to reanimate the Crater Hoof because there's almost no way you're going to have enough creatures on the battlefield for it to be lethal, and you really want it to be lethal when you reanimate Crater Hoof unless you know immediately posterior to that you'll have a second Crater Hoof. So that's where Inferno Titan comes in, and that's really what I'm trying to think of what the next best slot would be, and that actually might be Avacyn, because she's hard to deal with. If you get something that large that early, it very well may be the case that they just will roll over to an unstoppable creature. So that may be the case. It might be a mistake to play Inferno Titan. I might need to be playing Frost, because they both serve two different slots. They're both good in the sense of being on turn 3. Obviously, a 6/6 creature on turn 3 that has great abilities is good, but Frost Titan locks them down and slows them down. Inferno Titan can do that with creatures, but it can't lock their lands or other permanents down like the Frost Titan can. And Frost Titan's harder to kill, whereas they could just Doomblade your Inferno or whatever. They can't just do that to the Frost. They have to have sufficient mana resources. So maybe playing Frost in this list might be a good idea. The downsides to Frost is obviously harder to cast, and it can't act as removal in the same way. Frost Titan is kind of removal. Sometimes it's superior, but most of the time Inferno Titan's removal slot is good. Maybe Frost Titan should be in the sideboard. I might test it out and try. Unfortunately, it's kind of all in vain when it comes to Titans, because they're rotating. But since Magic Online rotates like a month later, maybe a little less, maybe like 3 weeks later, I can still goof off with it. But Avacyn might be correct, or any other unstoppable creature. I mean, I would say Sigarda, but she's castable. I mean, there's really no reason to run her as a reanimating slot. But Avacyn's really big. She blocks, she attacks with vigilance, and she is invincible. So that actually might be correct. I'll probably get a second one and test it. But Crater Hoof is plan A, and that's pretty much the way the deck works. I mean, after, let's say, 2 Mana Dorks and 1 Lingering Souls with 2 of them tokens is lethal. Actually, I think just 1 Mana Dork, 2 Lingering Souls tokens, and a Crater Hoof is lethal. So that's how quick you can win the game. As far as lands go, if you'll notice, I'm only playing Scar's Duels. I'm not playing any of the M11s because it's all about the first 3 turns of the game with this deck. Afterwards, you don't care if your lands come into play untapped. Obviously, Shimmering Grotto, because my deck does play all 5 mana symbols. I would like to play another one, but I can't really justify removing any more of the basics that aren't forests, and I can't justify reducing the forests. Same problem with Gavany Township. I really want to play a third, but I'm in the same problem. I also obviously can't reduce my duels. So I think this mana base is exactly the way it needs to be. It'll get much better post-rotation because it'll only be 3 colors, and I can play 3 Gavany Township without playing Shimmering Grotto. So post-rotation, the mana base gets better. It'll get really good if Birds is reprinted, which is still on the fence. We're not sure about that. Since it's a reprint, they wouldn't spoil it this early, so it's still very possible. Anyway, we'll be back with playtesting game.